Kelvin Davis.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, e te kaiwhakahaere o tēnei whare. Tēnei te mihi atu kia koe. Tētahi o ngā kaiwhakahaere tuarua o tēnei whare, koutou ko Trevor Mallard, ko te Honourable Chester Borrows, me tō tātou kaiwhakahaere matua, ara ko te Honourable David Carter, tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Kua rura atu I tēnei tūranga, I wenei tūranga no koutou. E ngā mema hurirauni I tō tātou whare, tēnei te mihi kia koutou, aha ko he mema hau, he mema hoki mai ana, tēnei te mihi kia koutou I rungi, te tūmanako, ko tō koutou whāngai kei ruta tēnei whare, hei hāpai I ngā āhuatanga, I te oranga mō tātou whānau, o tātou hapu, o tātou iwi, o tātou hāpuri, putanoa, I Aotearoa, tēnā koutou. Mr. Speaker, first, let me just congratulate you again on your return to the Deputy Speaker's position, as well as the Honourable Chester Borrows and the Honourable Trevor Mallard, as well as the Honourable David Carter having the Speaker's position. Mr. Speaker, this isn't my maiden speech, but it is my first speech as the elected member for Te Tai Tokerau, and for that I am extremely honoured at the faith that the people of Te Tai Tokerau have placed in me to work on their behalf. When I became the principal of Kaitaia Intermediate School, I said to my chairperson and my board of trustees that they'll never ever have a personal grievance, never have to worry about a personal grievance from me to them, because if the day ever came when I was not doing the work, the core business that I was employed to do, that is raise achievement, then they just need to tell me and I will resign and allow somebody else to come into the position to do that, to do the job that I couldn't do. And my pledge to the people of Te Tai Tokerau here and now is exactly the same. If ever I am not doing the job that I was elected to do, then they give me a few years, I must admit, but talk to my electorate people who will tell me, and then I will resign, because I'm not a member of Parliament just to sit here and fill up space, but I intend to make a difference for the people in the north. Mr. Speaker, I campaigned on 4 priorities: education, the economy of Te Tai Tokerau, to raise outcomes in Te Reo Māori, but also the elimination of sexual and domestic violence throughout New Zealand. And I make no apologies for the elimination of sexual and domestic violence from New Zealand have been my priority of priorities. And when I listened to the speech from the throne today and I heard the Governor-General talk about reducing poverty, eliminating poverty, reducing health disparity, improving educational outcomes and housing, I say now that if we can eliminate sexual and domestic violence from New Zealand, we'll go a very, very long way to improving outcomes in all of those social areas. Mr. Speaker, the #1 cause of youth suicide is sexual abuse. We do not need to sit here navel-gazing and wonder why it is our youth are killing themselves at an alarming rate. Sexual abuse is the #1 cause of youth suicide. The second most prevalent cause is domestic violence. Watching your mother get beaten up a couple of times a week is likely to lead you down that path. Mental health issues, Mr. Speaker, are often the result of unresolved sexual violence issues from a person's past. 75% of inmates in prisons, as I'm told by a member, someone from the Mason Clinic, 75% of inmates are not the nasty, evil, horrible people that we're led to believe. Most of them have done things that have got them into prison, but those crimes are the manifestation of unresolved issues from sexual violence or domestic violence. Domestic violence and sexual violence are both major drivers of poverty. So we talk about poverty and eliminating poverty and reducing poverty. Mr. Speaker, domestic violence and sexual violence reduces survivors, or in most cases, a woman's sense of agency, which is a term used to describe her ability to lift herself above her circumstances. Survivors of sexual and domestic violence have difficulty concentrating at school, learning. They have difficulty getting a decent job. They therefore have difficulty providing finance to their providing financially to their whānau's situation. And so often kids go to school without shoes, without food. And I say here and now that if we are to want to feed our kids, the first thing we should do is love their mothers. Mr. Speaker, the funding of services to help people who have suffered from sexual and domestic violence is woefully inadequate, and this is something that I asked the government to improve. 2 weeks ago, I was talking to an agency in Kaitaia that works with the survivors of domestic violence. They said that they are funded to work with 2.5 whānau a week. 2.5 whānau a week is what they're funded in their contract to work with, 2.5 whānau. They actually have 52 whānau on their books that they're working with. Mr. Speaker, that is the extent of the issue that we're talking about in terms of sexual violence and domestic violence being rampant throughout all stratas of society. Let me say now, it is not an ethnic issue. It goes across all ethnicities. It goes through all communities, through all socio-economic areas. It's just that wealthy people tend to have lawyers who can hide the problem a lot more. Mr. Speaker, between 23 and 28,000 young people under the age of 24 in West Auckland, Central Auckland and on the North Shore alone, we're not talking about Tai Tokoro, we're not talking about south of Auckland, we're just talking about those 3 areas within Auckland. Between 23 and 28,000 young people under the age of 24 have experienced sexual abuse. And I ask, how can those young people sit there and learn and concentrate on what the teacher is saying or what their lecturer in university is saying when their heads are filled up with the nonsense that went on, that occurred to them probably the night before, probably in the safety of their home, usually done by somebody they know, they love, and they should be able to trust. I said in my maiden speech that it's one thing to be born a male, it's another thing to become a man, and this predominantly is a male issue. 90% of offenders are male. That's not, and obviously 10% of offenders are female, but we as men need to step up and address this issue. The greatest enabler of sexual violence and domestic violence is silence. And an example was last night on TV1 News, where a political party on election night had a man who has been facing charges of rape of a young girl standing there at their election night function and mihiing. Mr. Speaker, just to wind up, I implore the government to address these issues of sexual and domestic violence so that we have improved outcomes for poverty, reducing poverty, improving health, education and housing. But I just would like to finish with this poem. I've been working with a group of women in the Hokianga to address domestic violence, and this poem, I believe, sums up the whole situation. I'm sorry I don't know the author, but it starts. We turn away and she goes back. We judge her life and she goes back. We deny her rights and she goes back. We fail to protect and she goes back. We offer scraps from our table and she goes back. We doubt her truth and she goes back. We look at her and thank God that we are strong. We stand powerful in the love of a good relationship. We're blessed because we did it right. We would not go back. She goes back to what she knows because she doesn't know anything else. She goes back to what is safe because he'll hurt them if she leaves. She goes back to what is home because she worked so hard to make it a home. She goes back to fix it because she believes she broke it. She goes back for the kids because children need a father. She goes back for the dream because she wants to be in love. She goes back to heal him because she has seen the wounds. She goes back to hide because he will keep it hidden. But I wonder what would happen if we did not turn away, if we did not judge her life, if we did not deny her rights, if we did not fail to protect, if we offered her the best instead of scraps, if we listened to the truth instead of doubting it, could we make a difference? Could we make a difference for the wounded children, the broken hearts and the shattered lives? Could we make a difference if we did not turn away?
I call the Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr Speaker, can I begin my first contribution in this, the 51st Parliament, by just once